Hello, everyone. Welcome to our playoff recap for the AHL. Round one is complete, and you're seeing the bracket on your screen now. We are in the Elite Eight in the AHL. So round two starting up next week, January 8th. Should be some great games in round two. But we'll look ahead to that and at another time. Right now, this video is to look back at what was in some of these series here. So we'll go through all the series, take a look at what happened, and some of the stats and all that kind of stuff, all right? So we'll hop right into it. Starting out with, in the West, we'll start with Henderson and Coachella Valley. So not a whole lot to really talk about here. Unfortunately, Coachella Valley had to forfeit Thursday night's games, games 4 and 5. So Henderson wins this series in 5. Just not enough players eligible. Just a unfortunate situation. Hopefully, we'll look at that maybe in the offseason as something to consider moving forward with the rules and whatnot. But Coachella Valley did win a game. So Henderson wins 5-0 in game 1. But in game 2, you see Kim Hart and Doug DeGlatt, they get 3 points apiece. And they beat up Henderson 4-2. So the series is 1-1 after 2 games. But unfortunately for Coachella Valley, they lose 4-1 in game 3. You see Jelly with 4 points, Ghost and Skippy with 2 points each. And Rose Petal Killer, great night for him, 18 saves on 19 shots. And they go up 2-1, and then the forfeits happen, and that's the series right there. So really not much more to even say about that, to be honest with you. Henderson moves on. So moving on to Ontario and Rockford. What an interesting little series this was. So, Rockford avoids being reverse swept by Ontario. I have no idea what's going on in Game 6 here. I don't know why this was forfeited. I have no clue, but they save themselves into Game 7. We'll look at Game 7 stats. You see for the Reign, D-Mac and Snipes, they have 2 points. J-Mo, 2 points. Oh, excuse me. But for Rockford, you have Pablo, Sniper, Jaybird, and Hentai, 2 points each. Sriracha with a point as well, and they get it done. King Golden and Net makes 20 saves for the Ice Hogs. So they move on to the second round. Looking at some player stats here. We'll go to the AHL, go to the playoffs. This is the only way we can do it by this because it's a goofy little site. We'll start with the Reign, all right? So J-Mo had 12 points in 4 games. Snipes had 9. Blurski had 8. D-Mac with 7. So decent production here from these guys. I remember there was a forfeit in there, so that's one less game for stats. And for the Ice Hogs, you see Heedless, 13 points for him. Sniper Jaybird, 11 points. Hentai, 11 points. Pablo with 8. Orbit Save with 6. So these guys definitely came to play. And they're moving on. So, they will face Henderson next round, right? So we'll go back here. We'll go back. I go all the way back down. Where are they at? Right here. Yeah. So they'll play Henderson. But yeah, Ontario almost. They were so close to getting that reverse sweep, but just coming up a little short. All right. So moving on to the Condors and Eagles. So a bit of an upset here. The Eagles, they get it done. Against the Bakersfield Condors. So they go up 2-0 in the series. Then Bakersfield come back and win game 3. Eagles come back to win game 4, so they're up 3-1. Bakersfield makes it 3-2, but Colorado, they close it out in game 6, and they move on. So we'll take a look. We'll look at game 2 here, just picking out a game to look at the box score. The Condors, you see Jay Bagels had 3 points. Eric E. had 2 points. Roycroft 77, not the NHL Roycroft, but the AHL goalie Roycroft. 6 goals against on 17 shots, not great. For Colorado, you had D. McGloin with 5 points, Bench Boss with 4 points, including a hat trick, and Silly Kaiser, 21 saves on 24 shots. So Solid stuff in that game from Colorado. We'll look at the player stats. Oops. Starting with the Condors. So go here, go here. So Eric E. had 9 points in 3 games. Charms had 7 points. Smitty had 5. Jay Bagels with 5. Tavares Snipes, he had 4. So, again, just a little, not a ton of production here. Guys with 10 points or plus. The guys at the top, they're doing their best, but just a little bit, they need a little bit more offensive firepower here in Bakersfield. And for the Eagles, they move on, and they have, I talked about these guys in my preview, OG, Jess, and Kucherov, man. These guys, they're solid players, man. You got to keep an eye on them. And then same with D. McGloin, he had 9 points. So those two top guys had 10 points apiece. D. McGloin had 9. Deplorable SOB had 6. Fantilli with 6. Bench Boss 6. The Real Bode with 6. So you see all these guys with some good point totals here for them. So it's not surprising they're moving on. So, yeah, Colorado gets the W in the series. They win in 6, and they are moving on. Moving on to the next series, Abbotsford versus Tucson. Now, if I remember correctly, someone did predict this series correctly. Not the games played, but Tucson, I did predict, would win this series, and they did just that. Abbotsford had to forfeit Game 3 due to an ineligible player in net. He was a game short of being eligible, so a tough break for Abbotsford. But beyond that, an interesting series here because Tucson, they win a close one, Game 1, 4-1 win for them in Game 2. They get the 4-4 win, and so in Game 4, they're up 3-0 Thursday night, and they come in with a shutout. They get outplayed a little bit, at least 20-15 with the shots for the Canucks. 7:42 time on attack for them to 6:23, so a little bit outplayed. But Tucson, they found a way. Honest Abe with the shutout for Tucson, so great job from him. And for Tucson, for Abbotsford, it's a tough way to end the season. Definitely hate getting swept out like that, but it is what it is, especially getting shut out in that decisive Game 4. Tough way to go. We'll look at the player stats. I don't know. There might not be much here, to be honest with you. Look at the Canucks. Just very little offensive production here. They only scored 1, 2, 3 goals in this whole series, so not a whole lot to really look at there. And it might be a similar story for Tucson because of that, the forfeit there. You have game killers, 6 points, 1 for Rose, 4 points, Mr. Gimli, 4 points. But yeah, pretty defensive series for the Roadrunners, and they find themselves moving on. They're going to play Colorado, and the interesting thing about that is that Tucson gets home ice. So the 3rd seed in the Northwest in the AHL now has home ice in round 2, so good for them. All right, so those are the Western series. Moving to the East, we see Rochester. So now I predicted Rochester. I think I actually nailed this one on the head. I think I said Rochester in 5 or 6. I forget. But they're definitely a good team. But Toronto, they started out up 2-0 in the series, and then Rochester routed all 4 in a row. So the Marlies had something cooking there, but just couldn't get it all the way done. Look at this. I believe this is Game 4 for Rochester. So you had Ziggy with 5 points for Rochester, Faceless with 4 points. So good point production. P. Nasty, 3 points. So good point production there. The Losey in net, 11 saves on 12 shots. Very good production out of him. Not much happening for the Marlies, unfortunately for them. So we'll take a look at the player leaders here for both of these squads in this series so far, at least for Rochester. The Americans. So you have Faceless with 10 points, Ziggy with 8, P. Nasty with 7, Sea Sauce with 6, Mighty Mountain with 4. So good stuff here from the Americans. They got their point production when they needed it most, especially down 2-0. You cannot go down 3-0. So they got it done. Obviously they're moving on. But we'll look at Toronto for the Marlies here. Um, I did mention this guy a lot, Cal Hockey. He is definitely one of their best players. 7 points for him. The Cheese 6 points. Virtue 89 6 points, and then it kind of just falls off. So just not a lot of depth here for Toronto. That's kind of evident in that Thursday night when you rattle off all these losses. It was huge for Rochester to get a win Wednesday, because now in games 4 through 6 you have to go against their second line, and not much depth for Toronto. So they unfortunately for them, they lose in 6. So moving on now to Providence and Grand Rapids. The Griffins getting it done in 7. Very good for them. Some interesting scores here. An 11-1 win for Providence. 5-4 win in Game 7 for Grand Rapids. We'll take a look at that box score. Gergensons with 4 goals. You had points all up and down the lineup for these guys. 2-2-2, 2-3. So Jiffy Jeff and net for them. So great stuff for Providence. Pigcar, Yauser, just not all the way there for them. So they are out. We'll take a look at their player stats. Playoffs. Oh God, this takes forever. We'll look at the Bruins first. So you have Pigcar with 18 points. Freedom with 13 points. Yauser with 9. Labrador with 7. Bobamis with 7. So decent production out of these guys. Just couldn't get it all the way done in Game 7. They just needed another goal or two. They need to make a save, play some defense. Just couldn't get all the way done there. For the Griffins, you see Medea, I hope I say his name right. 14 points for him. Gergensons with 13 points. Triton 10 points. Kafai 10 points. Soldier 9. Sloster with 6. I know he played in the NHL as well. So great stuff here for the Griffins, and they find themselves moving on to the next round. So good for them. Good for them. And the thing to know about Grand Rapids as well, since Detroit is out, they have their 2As, and that goes for, this is the same thing for the rest of these teams that have their NHL teams out. They'll have full use of their 2A, so it's something else to keep in mind as well. Anyway, going to Hartford and Hershey. Hartford winning this one in 5. Not particularly close. Hershey comes out and wins Game 1 7-3, but Hartford comes back and they pretty much dominate the rest of the way. A 10-2 win in Game 5. This was the decisive Game 5. Grigor with 7 points. Bedsy 6. Nicky Pinch with 5 assists for him. For Bears, again, not really much going on there. Just a tough way to go for them. We'll go to the player leaders. Look at the team stats for these guys. Oops, this is for the regular season. We want the playoffs. So we'll go with the Bears. Hershey, so Stefano gets 12 points. Pat Silva gets 6. Crimson King with 6. Big D Sparky with 5. Just not a lot of depth after Stefano. Maybe that's something to look for in the offseason for Hershey, just finding more scoring offensive support for the top guys. And for the Wolfpack, it's a bit of a different tune. Antibionics with 13 points. Grigor with 13 points as well. So these two guys leading the way. Hail to Brady, 8 points. K Parks, 8 points. So great balance up and down this lineup. You have 7 guys with 6 points or more. Chippy with 5 points. He's down here. So 8 guys with 5 or more points. So great stuff for the Wolfpack. And they are moving on pretty handily against Hershey. And finally, in Game 7, so this was a reverse sweep, I believe. If these games line up correctly, this is a reverse sweep, an actual reverse sweep. Wilkes-Barre comes back and beats Syracuse 4-3. So in 7, they had a 13-0 game in that. I don't know what's going on there. But look at the Game 7 box score. JT High scores with 7 points. Fire Cush at 6 points. Thanks Goalie with 5 points. So Wilkes-Barre really pouring it on in Game 7 here. For Syracuse, Clarkey, he had 3 points. Slide Through School and Jimmy Crablegs 2 points apiece, but just not Not enough for them in Game 7. They just needed one more win. They just could not get it, unfortunately for them. Take a look at the AHL leaders. Playoffs. Go to the crunch. Jimmy Crablegs with 15 points. No touches with 14. Slide through school 13. So these guys really putting on a good show, but just not enough. Noble, Clarkey with 7 apiece. Sniper Show with 5. So they just couldn't get it done. Just one game away. But for Wilkes-Barre, oh my God. Well, this is probably that 13-0 game. 31 points in 4 games. Oh my God. 30 points in 4 games. 22. Like, what the fuck are we doing with these 3 guys? Okay. That's tough for Syracuse. Old Bongwater with 6. Tacos the Dad 5. ICJD with 5. So, I mean, those 3 guys leading the way for sure. But my God. Is this this reminds me of the Comets from last AHL playoff run, the RA Comets I call them. So yeah, those are your playoffs games there. So looking ahead next week, I'll get a video out for the playoff previews for round 2. These are your 4 series. You have Rochester versus Grand Rapids, Hartford taking on Wilkes-Barre, Henderson taking on Rockford, and Tucson taking on Colorado. So thanks guys for tuning in. I will talk to you later.